creativity isn't just about producing or making things, whether that's art or videos or books or music, whatever it is. It's also a process that affects who you are as a person. It helps you grow, it helps you adapt, it helps you learn how to interpret new things, it helps you learn how to receive certain situations. Every time that you create something, put it out into the world, you evolve, and as much as you shape whatever it is that you're producing, it sort of shapes you back and changes who you are as a person. You know, sort of creating something and putting out to the world is kind of like broadcasting into a cave. You're going to get these echoes back from people out in the world, but also from your own interpretation of what it is that you've made. When you step back and look at it holistically, you're going to interpret it just like you interpret any form of art, and those echoes will compound and amplify, and the next time you go to create something, they will change the way that you do it, and they will change the outcome. So today I really want to explore a little bit about how creativity changes you as a person. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the great creators that have inspired me, and I think that will inspire you, and just generally lessons that they've learned, and a little bit about how to remain creatively satisfied in what it is that you're doing. Because without that satisfaction, you'll likely give up and stop doing what it is. But there are some things you can do to keep that excitement alive when you're creating something for the first time. Yeah, so as I said before, there's like this psychological shift that happens throughout the process of creation. You know, you start with this idea and it's very energetic, it's very exciting, and then you begin the creative process, you know, whatever that may be. Sometimes that energy dies out a little bit because you're pouring it into the subject that you're working on. Sometimes it dies out altogether, but not always. And then as the process goes on, you build up these waves, these, you know, peaks and troughs of creative energy where you're excited about a new part, or you're finding a particular element tedious and you're trying to get past it. But one psychological shift you can do is to sort of retrospectively think about the process that as a whole and what stage you're in. Sometimes it's very healthy to look at your current situation with a project and go, I guess I'm just in a slump at the moment. Or, okay, I'm very excited about this. Maybe I need to manage my expectations and bring it down a little bit. That exercise of learning about yourself and adjusting your mindset is so healthy to do, because it teaches you how to look at your own approach to a task. There's an interview from years ago with John Cleese of Monty Python fame, and he talks about how sometimes when a task is set to a group of people, the less creative people will rush off and start doing the task, particularly if it's a, you know, very time sensitive task. They'll start logically working through the process. I've got to do this, I've got to do this, next I need to do that, make a decision, do this. And quite often creative people will just sit back and let the problem at hand, the task, envelop them and sort of let them breathe it all in before they lift a finger and start executing on anything. And some really creative people, they do that for 90% of the time, and then the last 10% they execute and make the changes that need to be done. And quite often, when it comes to creativity and the creative output and the sort of out-the-box thinking, that solution and that approach is so much better, because you come up with something that's so radically different and such a monumental shift in the way of doing things that is really, really valuable. So the only way you can really achieve that, if you're one of those people like me that rushes in and starts doing, is to go, okay, hang on a minute, I'm getting too excited about this. I need to tone it down. Or if you're one of those people that leaves everything to the last minute, you should sit down and go, why aren't I being excited about this? Like, what needs to change? So, yeah, there's a psychological shift that you can do to maximize your creativity. Just the act of being creative and thinking about your creativity retrospectively adjusts your brains to see possibilities in a new way and limitations in a new way. It will stop you rushing into mistakes and making yourself feel like a failure, and it will also stop you just becoming lethargic and not doing anything and letting the creative opportunities pass you by. And the more that you create stuff and the more that you put yourself in that situation and you analyze yourself, the better you will become at adapting to uncertainty and adapting to new opportunities. So I guess what I'm trying to say is creativity will help you reset and reshape your mindset on creativity itself. And the only way you're going to do that is by creating things and experimenting and trying out different approaches, trying out the rushed approach, trying out the slow approach, trying out something in the middle, iterating and finding your creative space. Yeah. And one of the best things about that is if you take it a level higher, after you've done a few creative projects, you get to look at where you are now compared to where you were, and you get to see how all of the creative activity you've done has shaped you and the journey. You get to look back and see the path that you've come on and see how it shaped you, which is really exciting. And that really leads me on to my next point, which is that some of the greatest creators throughout history have understood how creativity is shaping them, and they've understood areas that they can expand and explore into. I think one of the best examples of this, and probably one of the best examples of creative people in the world and throughout history, is Leonardo da Vinci. You know, he's very famous for a lot of his inventions, he's very famous for a lot of his artworks, but if you go and look through his notebooks and things like that, he has thousands and thousands of sketchbooks that are filled full of random things that aren't really related to any field that he's known for. He has beautiful sketches of flowers, he has sketches of mountain landscapes and stuff, he has sketches of people, he has inventive sketches and almost blueprints, he has ideas, he has poems, he has notions around small stories and characters that he's worked out, fashion, you know, diagrams, inventive diagrams, technological diagrams, philosophical diagrams, diagrams of deities and different religious aspects. He goes to show that he knew where his creative limitations were, and when he hit a wall, he went and looked in a totally different place. You know, if he was trying to come up with an invention or something, famously his flying machine, and he was looking at it and he was up against the wall, he would, okay, let's look somewhere else, and often go to nature and find something in there that helped solve his problem. So in his own reflective way of understanding how he was thinking and how he's approaching creativity and innovative thinking, he knew his limitations and he knew when to go and look for other things outside of his, you know, normal remit, which is exciting. And talking about Da Vinci further, he didn't have just one or two books that were full of random notebooks. He had thousands of them, hundreds of them. There were so many of them that it, to anyone, it would look like he was trying to understand the entire world. Which brings me on to another brilliant creative, which is Picasso. You know, we know a lot of Picasso's famous artworks and famous paintings, but he actually produced, I think, somewhere close to 50,000 pieces of art. So statistically, most of his pieces of art and artwork and his creations weren't successes, at least in the eyes of, you know, art collectors and things like that. But he knew that his creative process required volume. He had to go through a vast quantity of ideas and approaches, different styles, different techniques and stuff before he found the ones that worked for him. So I guess that's another way that he potentially looked inwards of himself and said, okay, I don't have a problem with producing art, I just need to produce enough of it to get it right. And it's not about perfection for Picasso, it's about momentum. He had to keep that drive going and keep the experimentations going, keep the iterations going before he found things that worked. And to do that, he had to have a lot of trust in his process of being creative. He had to know that, I am on the right line, I just need to iterate enough before I strike gold. And the only way you can really understand that, because, I've been making YouTube videos, I've been making TikToks and stuff, and something Picasso does differently to what I do is, if I try and I make 10, 20 videos and none of them are successes, I just give up. He had trust that the process was correct. He just had to do enough of them to get there. So that's a lesson that he could have only learned about himself by retrospectively looking inside and understanding what creativity meant to him. Similarly, novelist and writer Stephen King, he produces loads of books and loads of brilliant stories every year, and he does that just by writing vast volumes. I think he writes something like 2,000 words a day, something like that. When you compare that to like writers like G.R.R. Martin, Game of Thrones, he does not produce nearly as many words per day. So they've looked at their own ways of producing a similar art form. They're both producing novels, but they know differences about themselves and about their ways of doing it and approaching. So that retrospective look inside yourself, introspective look inside yourself is really important in finding your creative way to remain satisfied and to avoid burning yourself out and to eventually strike gold, as it were. And I guess that kind of brings me on to my next point, which is creativity it's not like a one-time thing. It's a lifelong skill, and it's a lifelong aspiration to cultivate within yourself. In order to stay satisfied with your creativity, you have to understand that the process is quite messy. It can sometimes be unrewarding. It has high points and it has low points. But if you're looking to just get a quick win or get that magic just in the first instance, that's not what creativity is. That's kind of like virality, and there's loads of YouTubers that talk about how to become viral and stuff like that. I'm not here to talk about that. I'm trying to find something that's much more fundamental and much more satisfying in the way that people create stuff, in the way that creators create things. And yeah, the truth is that it is messy, and you have to find a spark within it that keeps you pursuing whatever it is that you're trying to do. And there's a number of ways you can do that. I think the top of the list is probably finding a way to detach yourself from vanity and external validation. Don't focus too much on the number of views, number of followers you're getting, comparing yourself to other creators. You need to detach yourself from that and recognize that you should be working on what excites you and what gets you energized to keep creating more. Unfortunately, we live in a very digital and metric-driven world where, for a lot of people, that dopamine hit comes from followers and likes and comments and stuff. But I promise you can rewire your brain to find that dopamine hit from just creating something in a new way, trying something, not knowing if it's going to work and pulling it off. And those are the creators that you love. The reason you love them is because they do stuff in a different way. You don't love your favourite musician, your favourite writer, your favourite video game because of the number of downloads it has or the number of likes it has. You love it because it's creative. You need to put yourself into that mindset of how can I be that person? How can I love the creativity and inspire that in other people and inspire that passion in other people? Another way to keep yourself satisfied is to develop a passion for learning, experimenting, and iterating. One of the things I love to do is to cook, and one of the best ways to keep me cooking new things and trying new creative things in the kitchen is to try and think of how many ways are there to do this. For example, how many ways are there to cook a potato? Have I tried them all? And that instills into me a sort of energy and an excitement to go and try them all and try and perfect, not necessarily perfect, but go and try all of the different techniques, different ingredients, different recipes, different dishes, and see what that brings off of it. And quite often I'll try a technique and then that sparks further ideas, and it becomes this cascade, this sort of avalanche of enjoyment, finding a passion for experimentation, finding a passion for trying new things and learning new things. And I guess probably the last best way to do it is to develop a sense of discipline, create systems and rituals to keep yourself on board. This is very, very powerful when you're first starting out something, because you've not really got enough data for the metrics to help or inspire you. You've not really done enough experimentation to find a learning path that works with you. But if you can say to yourself, I'm going to produce a video once a week for 10 weeks, or I'm going to write a page a day, or I'm going to do a new abstract painting a day, or whatever, that sense of ritual and that sense of discipline forms habits, and those habits form more experimentation and more learning, and then you see how it goes on from there. So I think those are probably the biggest ways to stay creatively satisfied and to keep pursuing stuff if you can. I'm really enjoying making these videos and thinking about different aspects of creativity and sharing them with you guys. I really hope that I'm able to put something out into the world that shows you all that creativity isn't just about making things and just the end product. There's so much more richness in there, whether that's through the journey, whether that's thinking about how it's affected you, whether that's thinking about how it's changed you in your interaction with other people and external validation. You know, every time you create something, you grow. Every time you share your work, you change. And all of that feeds back into you like a cycle on how you create and share and grow more. Yeah, I think if you can fully unlock creativity and what that means for you and how you put it out into the world, it's one of the most powerful tools you have for not only shaping your output, but shaping who you are as a person. So yeah, don't waste it. Don't pass up or move on from creativity, because it's one of the most fundamental things that makes us human. Yeah, I would love to hear a bit about what it is that you guys have been working on. What's something creative that you've done in the past that's changed you, a particular endeavour that's had a big impact on the way that you've been doing things. Yeah, subscribe if you want to keep exploring creativity and personal growth. If there's anybody out there that you know is a creative person that will benefit from this video, please go and share it with them. I really want to bring this message to as many people as possible. Yeah, and most importantly, go out there and make something today. Do something. Create it, put it out into the world, see how it changes you. Until next time.